So over the course of my channel's history, I have made a lot of game reviews. However, after looking at my stash of previous videos, I had soon come to the realization that maybe except for the Slendytubbies video, I haven't given a single video game a positive spotlight, and especially mobile horror games. Which does make sense because, well, look at this. However, for every 1,000 crappy mobile games out there, one great one tends to stand out from the rest, and it seems that a lot of the comments would like me to speak about them. So today, I'll be going back on the App Store, but as a spin-off, I'll be showing you horror games that aren't terrible. So, without further ado, let's take a look at some good mobile horror games. So what does a good mobile horror game look like? Well, one of the first games I immediately thought of was Eyes, a game that has you go around collecting cash money while running away from a spooky head. But despite the modest premise, I'm sure well over 90% of you have at least heard of this game. And boy was it scary. Looking at the App Store, this game has managed to near 10,000 ratings with a 4.6. As for the reviews, they're very positive, saying things like this game is okay but I still love it, best horror game on mobile, and I have nostalgia for this game. With the description reading, you break into the mansion at night. It's huge and built like a maze. You're trying to escape, but the monster is after you. Alright, so with all that out of the way, we can now move on into the game. And yeah, the gameplay is just good. A little bit like Slender, the objective is for you to collect 20 bags of coins, which is scattered over 3 layers of a mansion. One interesting element that this game has is for you to be able to see where the monster is. You can do this by finding eyes all over the walls. There are other things too, like bottles of poison, but they're merely used for notes, which its only purpose is for lore building, which is really neat. And the idea of the monster is just amazing. Having a floating head chase you around a mansion is incredibly eerie, and while it doesn't look nearly as scary as the PC version, it's still fairly creepy. Oh, and also, this game runs really well, which is rare for a mobile game, so bonus points for that. But yeah, that's about all this game has to offer. Thankfully, the game isn't overly complicated as it's a rather simple game. Once you collect all the money, you find the escape area and leave, and that's it. There are other levels in this game featuring other monsters, but I'm not really going to be talking about them. And there are a few noticeable problems like the linear map design, a lack of replayability, and a bunch of microtransactions. But as long as you can ignore that and view this game based on the main level, you'll find it to be pretty good. It's simple, it's solid, and it's scary. Overall, I highly recommend you play this game if you haven't. The second game on my list for a good mobile horror game is Granny. Now, interestingly enough, I've actually already made a video about Granny not too long ago. But despite the fact that the community of Granny is questionable, looking at the game itself, yeah, it's alright. Made back in 2017, the description reads, "Welcome to Granny. Granny keeps you locked in her house. Now you have to try and get out of her house, but be careful and quiet. She hears everything." And looking at the ratings, it has over 81,000 with a 4.4. That's really good. So as for the lore of the game, you probably already know what it is. You walk out into a forest, spooky grandma hits you, and now you have to find a way to escape. Now, usually I don't get scared of the appearance of Granny, but occasionally I actually manage to get scared when she popped out of nowhere. And the gameplay is packed with content. One of the only issues I have with this game is that you can only hold one item at a time. But even then, that's not really a problem and more of just a preference. I also love how Granny has voice lines too. Again, it's not really that scary, but you can definitely tell the game had a lot of love and effort put into it, which is an element a lot of mobile games are missing surprisingly. And even after 5 years of this game being out, they are still updating the game to this day. Impressive. And that's kinda all I have to say about this game. There's no point really in going in depth with the gameplay, because I'm sure you already know everything about it. The game is challenging, decently atmospheric, and if you haven't played this game, you should. I actually do really like this game. It's just a shame people somehow turned the game from this to this in less than a year. But yeah, on to the next game. The third game I'm going to be playing is The Bathrooms. And just a heads up, you might have a hard time looking at this game. So out of all of the 4 games, this one is going to be the shortest, with the gameplay just clocking in at 5 minutes. It's an incredibly simple game, but with that being said, I found it to be really unnerving. The description of this game is pretty plain, saying just bathroom vibes, wander around dark halls of urinals collecting strange cubes. Well, the guy definitely wasn't lying, as the goal of the game is exactly that, with the only catch being your screen is extremely pixelated. This makes the game really eerie, as the farther away something is, the more incoherent it becomes. But here's the catch. There isn't even a single monster. The only purpose of this game is to creep you out, and I love it. It's simple, it's not replayable, and the cubes don't even render. You have to collect them via the blue lights. But somehow, this game is scarier than most. There isn't even sound in this game, with the only sound being certain music cues. And that's all you need to know about this game. Once you collect all the cubes, you're just put back into the menu. Who knew that a short, empty game could be super creepy? I give this a 2 out of 2. And the last game I'll be playing is Midnight Remastered, a far more underrated game with just 14 ratings of a 4.1. Unlike the last 3 games, this one takes place in 2D. But despite that, I found this game to be creepier than most. The objective of the game is to collect 7 notes of sins, and avoid death from the spooky Midnight Man, which is reinforced in the description saying, collect the 7 letters of deadly sins and repent for your past in this horror game. A remastered version of the 2017 web game Midnight. Collect the 7 letters of deadly sin. Oh, okay, it's just repeating itself, so you get the idea. And now we're in the game. And of all of the previous 3 games, this one is the best in terms of atmosphere. Even though it's 2D, that hasn't stopped the developer from making the lighting really good. As a matter of fact, the lighting is probably better than Granny and Eyes alike. And speaking of lighting, you'll need it. Because the gimmick of this game is that you always need to have some light in your candle, otherwise you'll die. Midnight Man alone can't kill you, but he can attempt to turn off your candle. This is a mixed bag. It's an incredibly unique take on how the monster kills you, but the only issue is that it can get unnecessarily hard at times. You can find matches around the area, but they're very scarce. So if you are low on light and you can't find a match, you're pretty much screwed. There's also no way to save your progress, so if you die, you'll have to restart the whole way back. And this might be just me, but I found this game to be a tad bit too dark, even with a full light. Maybe if the developers created these rooms with dim lighting as save rooms, then that would be pretty cool. But yeah, you probably know the rest. Just like Slender, collect the various notes, escape through the door, and you win. Overall, the game itself was spooky, but a tad bit flawed. But it is incredibly underrated, so I highly recommend you give this a go. So let's just move on now. And that was the last game. To be honest, I actually had a lot of fun making this video. It was nice for me to actually play a great mobile horror game, for once, and brings me back to a time when games like these weren't the standard. However, don't expect me to do this ever again. On the top of my head, I already knew games like Granny and Eyes would make it on here, but for the last 2, it was actually quite a challenge to find any decent games. There were some other titles that I forgot to mention in this video, but other than that, I couldn't find any other scary games to talk about. But with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you sometime in the future. Goodbye.